Hello, everyone. So, thank you for joining. Welcome to the webinar. Now, we'll be talking about a different topic today. We'll be talking about Scrumban. How many of you have heard this? Has anybody heard of Scrumban? We talk
Yes.
about yes. So, is it real? So, does it anything exist like Scrumban? Who created it, and what do we do? So, in this webinar, probably we'll uncover all the myths around Scrumban. I'm Satyajit Gantayat. You can call me Satya. It's much easier to pronounce. I'm an Agile coach, a safe practice consultant, an IC Agile accredited trainer, and a PMA ATP instructor. So, as part of Agile 30, we'll be uncovering a lot of myths around Scrumban and a lot of mysteries around Scrumban. So, this is our agenda. So, we'll be talking about why Scrumban. Right? We are happy with Kanban or Scrum. So, why Scrumban? Why somebody even spoke about it? And what exactly it is, and who uses Scrumban, and then why they feel the need to use something different. And if you're interested, then how do you get started? So we'll be talking about different steps. Like if you're already practicing Scrum, and then if you want to take the advantages of Scrumban, then how do you get started? So we'll be talking about step-by-step implementation of Scrumban, implementation or practice in Scrumban. And then what are the advantages of Scrumban? Why should you use it? Do you get value out of it? Should you modify your current practices? So what are the advantages? We talk about that. And just a word of caution, there, of course, with every framework, with every practice, there are some limitations. There are some pros and cons. So we'll be discussing the limitations of Scrumban. So that's the agenda. But first of all, does anything like this exist? Is it real? We have a Kanban guide, we have a Scrum guide, and we have a lot of materials for a lot of these different frameworks. But Scrumban, is it real? But why Scrum? Before we talk about what is Scrumban, we'll say why Scrumban? Why somebody felt the need to bring in some additional practices? Now, first is we have seen a lot of constraints with Scrum. Right? If you read the Scrum guide, they say Scrum is simple. And the co-creators of Scrum Guide, Jeff Sutherland, Cam Schwaber, they've written in the Scrum Guide that try it as is and determine if its philosophy, theory, and structure help to achieve goals and create value. And the Scrum framework is purposefully left incomplete, only defining the parts required to implement Scrum theory. And rather than provide people with detailed instructions, so Scrum framework is not very prescriptive. So instead of providing people with detailed instructions, the rules of Scrum guide the relationships and interactions. They say, we are giving you only a set of events, artifacts, and roles. Beyond that, what practices do you follow, what tools you use, we are not prescribing you. And by the way, everybody knows what is Scrum. So 2 weeks before, we had a webinar about Scrum. So that is Scrum in 60 minutes. And the recording, if you have missed that webinar, the recording is uploaded to the Agile Mania YouTube channel. You can, if you want to know more about Scrum, you can go through this YouTube video. Right. In this webinar, we are going to talk about only Scrumban. We are not getting into the nitty-gritties of what is Scrum and what is Kanban. All right, so coming back to Scrum. So if you read the Scrum guide, they say Scrum is purposefully left incomplete. We are not prescribing you everything. We are just giving you a set of guidelines, the events, artifacts, and roles. But should you use visualization? Should you use any other practices with work in process limit, cycle times, lead times? They are not talking anything about that. Okay? So that is one of the reasons why there is some room for improvement with this Scrum framework. Again, there are a lot of constraints with Scrum. They say every sprint must have a sprint goal. If you don't build any increment after every sprint, then you are not using Scrum. You're not doing Scrum. So Scrum comes with some constraints. Now, if you are in a support team, right? If you are in a production support team, or you have continuous work flowing to your task board, then probably it is not really possible to have a fixed duration of sprint, right? And a sprint goal and some increments after that. Right after the time box of sprint is over. So there are some constraints with Scrum. And suppose your team, as I was mentioning, suppose your team is a production support team, or your team is continuously getting the work. Now there is no fixed duration that you can define. So there's continuous flow of work, and then people are continuously working on those items and then finishing those items. In that case, probably it is difficult to work within the constraint of the Scrum framework. And suppose, say, your priorities, the scope, the customer priorities change frequently within the sprint. Suppose, say, you have today you started the sprint, you had the sprint planning, and then you identified what work has to be completed within this 4 weeks. And once you start your execution, your customer comes on the second day or third day and says, no, hey, the priority changed and we have to work on something important. Now, what do? You have to, whatever you had planned initially, you have to leave that and then start working on something else. Because that's what the customer says it's important. Maybe there is a production issue. Maybe there is some end users problems. If this happens frequently, then there is frequent interruption in your sprint, in your 2 weeks or 4 week sprint. If this happens frequently, then probably it is not really possible to implement Scrum as it is defined in the Scrum guide. That's when we have the need of something different. And that's how Scrumban got its birth. And it uses Scrum's stable structure of sprints and events. And then it adds a lot of elements, nice elements of Kanban, like the visual workflow, the work in process limits, right? And then blends the good things of Kanban, good things of Scrum into one coherent approach. And this entire idea was popularized by somebody known as Corey Ladas, who presented the Scrumban, not as alternative to Scrum or Kanban, but they say, no, his argument was, let's take Scrumban, take Scrum and then improve it. And he presented, because in the 2009, Scrum was kind of new. Now, the first Scrum guide was published in 2010. It was talked about by its co-founders like Ken Sauber and Jeff Sutherland. They had written a book and then they were talking about it, but it was formally published in 2010. So Scrum was kind of new. And then Kanban was originated at Toyota Production System. Right? Kanban was not for IT. It was primarily in the manufacturing industry to better manage their work. So I would not say Kanban is a framework, but it was applied to a set of processes, improvement principles, which was originated at Toyota Production System. So Kanban was later, then people started applying in software. So both of these things were new in 2009. And that's when Corey Ladas, he got this idea. He said, hey, why not use Kanban to improve the Scrum framework? That's how Scrumban was originated. And then he explained this. He wrote a nice book called Essays on Kanban Systems for Lean Software Development, a nicely titled book. So he presented this, a different way of working. So he says, again, that's what I understood from this book. He says, improve Scrum by using principles of Kanban. He was not trying to change Scrum or trying to change Kanban. But again, this is not an official guide. This is just a suggestion from Corey Ladas. Unlike we have a Kanban guide, we have a Scrum guide. There is no official guide for Scrumban. It is just that how do we blend these both and then improve our flow of work, improve our processes. So what is Scrumban? So like as I said, it takes the best of Kanban and Scrum. It's like a half and half pizza. Right. So we have Kanban, we have those things like WIP limits, which I'll explain, the pull mechanism, flexible roles. Okay, again, Kanban doesn't talk about any specific role of product owner or Scrum Master. And then there are a lot of Kanban metrics like lead time, the cycle time, reading the cumulative flow diagram. So those are the best ingredients of Kanban. Now Scrum, as all of us know, probably the sprints, the Scrum events, the artifacts, the roles, accountabilities, the daily Scrum, and then how do we do this planning, retrospectives, reviews, all that. So take the best of everything, half of this, half of that, and then create a nice pizza for your work. Of course, depending on your context. So why Scrumban? As I said, it's flexible. You can customize it to your needs. You can create flexibility and save time by picking the Scrum roles and events that bring value to your team and stakeholders. And use Kanban metrics like WIP limit, cycle time to help you streamline your processes and reduce the frequency of the events that you keep. So Kanban metrics help catch problems as they happen instead of waiting for a review or a retrospective event. Like in sprint, most of the times, yes, we do collaborate, but we wait till the end of the sprint review or retrospective. So what happens when something goes wrong in the middle? What happens if the scope changes in the middle? What happens when you have to change something in the middle of the sprint? So Kanban helps you catch problems as they happen instead of waiting for an event. And Scrum prescribes all these events, these time-boxed events that are so inbuilt in the Scrum framework. Scrum says if you are not doing sprint planning, you are not doing Scrum. If you are not doing sprint review after the end of 2 weeks or 4 weeks, then you are not doing Scrum. So maybe some teams feel that there are too many meetings. So Scrumban helps you hold meetings only when you need them. Okay. So we'll see how. So Scrum sprints always have a fixed duration dictated by the time, usually 2 weeks or 4 weeks. In contrast, in Scrumban, you can be more flexible about those meetings that take place. For example, you may decide that a planning meeting is needed only when the number of work items in your backlog drops. So just in time sprint planning, instead of having a time box of 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, we have to have a sprint planning. No, we can be more flexible. We'll see how that is done. And Scrumban gives teams more flexibility with their roles. In Scrum, there are fixed roles with some accountabilities, with fixed accountabilities. We have a product owner, we have a Scrum master, right? And the team is self-managed, self-organized with that roles. For teams working in other disciplines, such as growth, for example, incorporating marketers, designers, and salespeople, it can be more difficult to identify this single role of product owner or a Scrum master because everybody is working towards a common goal. So the accountabilities in some teams, like if you have a team of designers, have a salespeople, it's very difficult to define these roles. Okay? So Scrumban gives us that flexibility with the roles. And Scrumban allows team to customize how much structure they want their work cycles to have. It gives the team a chance to find a happy medium between continuous flow and a continuous workflow with no clear start or end can feel monotonous to Kanban teams, but building in their regular retrospectives, bring in some sprint ingredients that can help. So who's it for? Anyone currently using Kanban? Because you can if you're already using Kanban, then you can relate much better to the improvement processes like WIP limit, explicit policies, the cycle time. But it's more suitable for people who are already using Scrum and they have all this constraint of Scrum, right? The time box, these events, the roles, right? Sprint goals, and then changing priorities in the middle of the sprint. If you are struggling with those constraints within the Scrum framework, then it works better. So when to use? When, as I mentioned earlier, requirements and priorities change more frequently in the middle of the sprint. Is it happening for your team? Then probably Scrumban is for you. So Scrumban gives teams more flexibility to adapt to changing priorities at any time. And team is assigned more than it finishes, or other bottlenecks cause work to pile up somewhere in your process. So with Scrumban, teams may pay more attention to Kanban metrics such as WIP or cycle that identify problems more quickly. Or you need to block all other sprint work for testing towards the end of the sprints. Or you need to make a heroic effort to achieve the promised sprint goal. Usually that's the challenge we see. Right? While this might be evidence that you are taking on too much each sprint, Scrumban can help you if you add WIP limits to your Scrum practice. So we'll see what is WIP limit. And probably you are not getting much value from sprint goals or certain Scrum events like planning, daily stand-ups, or your retrospectives. So Scrumban can help teams save time by eliminating these mandatory Scrum events that don't serve their goals. Right? If you feel that there are too many meetings because it is mandated by the Scrum guide, but probably you are not getting benefit from it. So instead of that mandatory events, how can we have just-in-time events, which we will see? And maybe your team prefers focusing on and working in Kanban's flow, but your stakeholders like the regular cadence of Scrum. So Scrum offers regular planning, review, release. So probably your stakeholders, they love that because after 2 weeks, 4 weeks, they can see the progress. So they insist on using Scrum, but your team prefers to work in the Kanban style on focusing the flow. So in that case, Scrumban lets you combine the best of both the frameworks. And Scrumban can give Kanban workflows a bit more structure that reduces monotony. So let's just see how to actually do it. So for example, you are already doing Scrum and you have those constraints that we just discussed. And then you want to move towards Scrumban. So how do we do it? So this is a secret sauce, a secret formula to move from Scrum to Scrumban. Okay. So visualize the work. I will take you through each of these steps and then impose WIP limits, refine the board and add more columns. Right? Because the best thing about Kanban is Kanban says you don't have to have everything at the beginning. Unlike Scrum, Kanban says you can begin with whatever you know. Because Scrum Guide has said, no, you have to have all these events, you have to have all these artifacts, you have to have those roles. But Kanban, the best about Kanban is Kanban doesn't impose so many things. It says you can begin with whatever you know, but you have to improve. You have to improve your way of working, improve your process. So which we'll see, I'll demonstrate how to do that. And then add swim lanes, add explicit policies, and trigger events. So just-in-time events. We don't have to strictly follow all these events. Whenever we need them, we can trigger those events. Okay. So I'll take you through this 6 steps of how to move from Scrum to Scrumban. So first is visualize the work. And again, the disclaimer, these are the points suggested by me personally, my personal opinion, after taking inspiration from different sources. Right? If you look at any other Scrumban resource, maybe somebody else will talk about some other steps. So these are based on my understanding, based on my experience, how do you move from Scrum to Scrumban? This is my opinion. Okay? And probably not the best, but according to my experience, this is how you should move towards Scrumban if you are already doing Scrum. So first is visualize the work. Probably nothing new. All of us do that. Knowingly, unknowingly, we all do that. But Scrum Guide never told to have a Scrum board. Never told to have a to-do in progress done board where you can move tickets. That people automatically started using a lot of these tools like Jira. When Scrum was getting popular, Jira was also getting popular. So a lot of people started using Jira by default. And then Jira introduced the Scrum board. So everybody started using the Scrum board. So probably you're already there. You're already doing it. So have a simple visualization tool. Now, we don't have to be perfect in that. Just start with a simple board like this, to do in progress done. Begin with this. Now, we have a backlog of items that we need to complete. So what do? We do some kind of planning. You call it sprint planning, you call it whatever. But we'll do some kind of planning and then say, okay, hey, out of this 50, 60 backlog items, we think that we will take these 8 items and start working on it. Right? So let's start. Now, after some planning, we said, okay, we'll start working on this 8 items. We will not have a fixed duration when we can complete it, but as and when we complete, we will do another planning and full work, which I will demonstrate. So now we did some planning and then people started working on it. And boy, we just love to start the work, right? We humans, we love to start a lot of things. We love to start the work. Okay? So we have 5 developers. They started working on this 6 items. And then we have a challenge here because we are not focusing on finishing. One of the principles that Lean said was start finishing, stop starting. There is no value in lot of in-progress items. One completed item is more valuable than probably the 6 in-progress items. So let's start focusing on finishing, then starting a lot of things. Okay. So now all the 6 items are in progress. You have heard about context switching, right? So one of the wastes that Lean talks about is context switching. We start working on something in the morning, and then after 2 hours, I'll say, "Oh no, I have to work on this four item four." Then I leave this and then start working on four, and then after 2-3 hours, I go back again to one. So there's a lot of productivity wastes when you switch context. The context switching is one of the ways that Lean talks about. So what do we do now? Developers are starting a lot of things. So let's have a WIP limit. So what is WIP?
Work in progress.
Work in progress. So let's have a WIP limit. We'll say, hey, not more than 4 items should be in progress for at any given limit here. We did a headline and said not more than 4 items should be here. Great. So that is one thing. So we did visualization, then we create imposed WIP limits. Now, when you say in progress, what does it mean? Yes, we know that somebody is working on it, but where is it now? Is somebody testing it? Has development been done? We don't know. Right? So let's refine a little bit. So refine this in progress column. So what we'll do now, when you say in progress, let's divide it into 3 different columns. One is somebody is analyzing it, then somebody has to start coding on it, and then somebody has to test it in order to make it done. So we just refined that in progress column into specific work items. So now we say this looks much better. Anybody can say, oh, okay, on work item 1, all the work has been done, but now somebody is testing it. So work item 2 and 3, analysis has been done, and then somebody is coding it. Great. Now we have a better picture. So refine the board and add more columns. Okay, we begin with whatever we knew, and then slowly improving our way of working. So now here we improved our visualization. Okay. Now we have set up these limits for analysis, coding, and testing. Now what do we do is we have, say, here again, right? Kanban is a kind of pull system. So what do we mean by pull system? Anybody knows what is a pull system?
Once the task is done, so we will pull from the to do.
Not only that. Think about how food is managed in a McDonald's outlet, right? The counter, and if you go to a buffet counter. In buffet counter, everything is already prepared. Now probably they prepare items for 100 people or 200 people. And the food is already done, ready. Now the customer, they have to, in order to finish that food, they have to push it to people. Say, hey, come and eat. Rather than that, in McDonald's outlet, you buy a token. Now you order something, pay the money, buy a token, and then give that token to the person who's preparing. And now based on that, there is a demand first. So based on that, they pull a burger, and then customer pulls the burger from there. Right? So it's something which we have not kept it ready, but rather first creating a demand and then let the customers pull the value. Again, these are all concepts originated at Toyota Production System when the automobile industry was booming. Right? So there was a lot of demand, and a lot of these companies, they started creating a lot of inventories because there was high demand and people were just buying the cars. The automobile companies, they were unable to meet the demand. So everybody started manufacturing a lot of cars, a lot of units. So now slowly the supply was more than the demand. And gradually what happened, these automobile industry, a lot of these companies, they ended up with a lot of inventories, which was not taken by the customers, additional inventories. And that was a complete waste when you have editing in the warehouses. So that is why they said, hey, we'll first create a demand, let the customers pull value from us. So that is why Kanban is a pull system. So when testing team is ready, they pull the card from here. So you are rightly saying that when analysis team is done, they pull the card from to do. So it is not only from to do, but for every team. So for every developers. So as a tester, I have finished testing all these things. Now I pull the item rather than this developers pushing. Yeah. I say, hey, we have finished the work, take. But here, with this arrangement where we have analysis, coding, and testing, now suppose say the developers have finished 2 and 3. How will the tester know when they have finished? In that case, we'll slightly improve our board. Again, I said add more columns and improving, right? So now what we say is after coding in the development, they'll say, hey, tester, this is ready to test. So what they will do, the developers, once they start working on something, if it is coding is done, they move it to ready to test. And when the testing team is ready, they'll pull the work from it. So it is about improving your visualization, improving your way of working. And now it's very clear testers are pulling from ready to test. So the developers, once they finish, they pick, they put their card here. The 3 is done. Now the testers, when they are ready, they will pull it from here. So we improved our item. Now, another challenge is, say this analysis team or developer, whoever is working on it, he finished or she finished this. Now 4 came here. Now this developer has to start something for analysis. Now he or she can randomly pick this 5 because it came first, or randomly pick this one. So we don't want that. We want to ensure that they are working on something which is prioritized. Maybe number 8 is of highest priority. Okay? This is of P1. Even though it came late, it is of highest priority. How do we ensure that this team, this developer who is analyzing, he pulls this one only, not this one, not this one? How do we ensure that? For that, we'll have swim lanes. Okay? We said, okay, hey, we will define some prioritization. So here we will say in this area, we will have only the P1 work items, the most important ones. And here we will have the lesser important, the P2 ones. Okay? And below everything else. So now when this analysis team or developer who is going to analyze knows that instead of picking 8, he or she can pick 5 because 5 is 5, 6, and 7. Only when these 3 are done, then probably they take this one, which is of lesser priority. So we organize a little bit more. Now we can ensure that the developers are picking the right priority work items. So we added so that improved our work, but there's still some challenges. Okay. Now say the developer said it is number 4 is done. We are done with the development. It is ready to be tested now. Right? Now tester picks it up. They pull this. Now they figure out that some development has not been done. There will be some conflicts. Tester will not be happy. They'll say, hey, no, you said it is ready to be tested. We picked it up, we pulled it, but we see that some development is still left. What do we do now? Let's add some rules. When you say it's ready to test, what do you mean by that? Okay. So we said, okay, that means all coding is complete, unit test is done, so everything is done. So we add some explicit policies. So for every work, for analysis, coding, when you say testing is done, what do you mean by that? Say, okay, one is acceptance criteria is met, no P1, P2. So we said, okay, these are done, and that's why we are saying testing is done. Ready to test, that means all coding completed, all the unit testing completed, so all the code review done, all the checklist. As a developer, we have a checklist, that the code review checklist, that is done. So we can, a rule. When we say done, that means what? That means it has met all these 3 conditions. So we add explicit policies. So that is another, within our Scrum, now we are still doing probably a Scrum, but we are tweaking a little bit. Okay, adding some additional elements. So until now, probably we did not break anything about Scrum. Right? We had our sprint planning. Right? Initially, we had a sprint planning, and now we are doing the sprint. And during the sprint, we are visualizing our work, managing our WIP limits, adding some policy rules, and improving our visualization. So we have not gone away from what Scrum says. But now, one of the challenges that we discussed was the constraints the Scrum had, right? A lot of meetings, we don't find any value in those meetings. And we said, we don't have a sprint goal. We can't come up with a sprint goal. And the priorities are changing more frequently. We cannot just say, no, for these 4 weeks, we'll only work on these 10 items, because within the sprint, somebody comes up with some urgent requirements. So in that case, what we will do is we will slightly change this Scrum implementation, the Scrum framework. So what we will do is, now we are not going to work on a constraint of 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Okay? So what we will do is, we'll start with some planning and manage our work, and based on the needs, we will trigger events. So we will not fix a 2 weeks or 4 weeks duration. What we'll do, we'll continuously work on it. Let the work flow here. And based on priority, suppose say after 3 days, we were about to pick 8, but there's something P1 came up, work item 10. So instead of this, we'll pick this. Now it gives us a little bit more flexibility. So otherwise, the teams were saying, hey, no, we had done a sprint planning. We were working on these 10 items. We had decided that these 10 items are going to be there for 4 weeks, but after a week somebody came and said, no, stop that and work on something else. So we were confused. So now we are not fixing that we are going to work on these 10 items or 8 items for this 4 weeks. So if there is something urgent coming in the middle, instead of picking up 8, we'll pick 10. And suppose say we are done with all the items. Now there is 8 also is completed. Now we can prepare or trigger an ad hoc planning meeting. We are not working on 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It's a continuous flow of work. And the moment that we see that there is lesser item on the to-do, then we trigger a sprint planning, some ad hoc planning. And that, again, similar to the first slide that I showed, again, we'll pick some items. So say, okay, hey, we'll start working on these items after our planning, and then continue our flow. So we can have some on-demand sprint planning when we see that the to-do items are low. That is first. And then we said, okay, we'll meet every day. We'll use the Scrum flavor. We'll meet every day for our daily Scrum, because Kanban did not tell anything about daily Scrum, but we will nevertheless meet and then check whether somebody is running into some problems, how is the progress. So we will meet like a daily Scrum. Great. So have a daily Scrum. And then we also talk about, we also need to improve, continuously learn, and then see. Yes, so we need to have a retrospective, maybe at some interval, not necessarily that end of 2 weeks, 4 weeks, because now we are not doing a 2 weeks, 4 weeks sprint. We are continuously managing our flow of work. And on demand, we are doing similarly. Maybe we can have say, hey, after a certain interval, maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, let's look back and then see whether we can improve as a team. Not necessarily only 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but whenever we can have some interval and then say, okay, let's meet and discuss about the improvements. Not only improvements, we can also celebrate our accomplishments, see what is going good for us. So it's about continuous learning. So we are using the retrospective element from. So have some trigger events, on-demand events. We don't have to necessarily follow the sprint constraints. So these are the 6 steps to go from Scrum to Scrum-Bound, and then continuously experiment for improvement. As I mentioned earlier, Kanban did not tell that you have to have everything, only then you should do Kanban. Kanban said you begin with whatever you know and then start experimenting to improvement. So this is what we discussed, the 6 steps. First is visualize the work, which probably all of us are doing, but probably we are not imposing implements. Refine the board, add more columns, and then add swim lanes for handling that priority, prioritizing your work. Add explicit policies to ensure that we have a clear guideline of each column. When we say testing is done or when we say development is done, what do we mean by that? Everybody should agree to it. And then have ad hoc events, trigger events. And these are the 6 steps. Implement it and start experimenting. So follow these steps if you are already doing Scrum and then want to move towards Scrum-Bound. And again, as I said, these points, of course, there are a lot of material, there are a lot of videos that I watched and then read, got through some experiments in my teams. And then based on my experiment, I feel this is the way to go from Scrum to Scrum-Bound. And you can also go, probably you are doing already the swim lanes, WIP limits, explicit policies. All what you do have to now is add work cycles, adding work cycles that are either time or trigger based, like that I was mentioning the sprint planning. So trigger based creates beginning and endings, or at least rest points. So usually a meeting that's similar to sprint planning or review or demonstration. So add work cycles and maybe have a period setting a goal. Maybe you can have a goal for what should be our goal as a team in the next 5 weeks, and then hold retrospective meetings. Probably you, if you are doing Kanban, you are not doing retrospective right now, but hold those meetings like we added here, some trigger events. So hold some retrospective meetings after some interval. So these are the steps if you are going from Kanban to Scrumban. Advantages, as we saw, increased flexibility because Scrumban delivers incremental work with every sprint. It allows for project changes in the middle of the process, and continuous delivery with board and a continuous flow of work. Team can deliver features as they complete them. Okay. No need to wait for till the end of a sprint, and reduce overloading, limiting work in process to the team's capabilities allows for progress without burned out. Okay. We know that we have to stay within that limit. And faster issue resolution, laying out cards on a board gives Scrumban the transparency the teams need for better collaboration while quickly identifying problems and solutions. And ability to tackle large-scale projects, because both Scrum and Kanban are about continuous and incremental improvement. Scrumban allows teams to work toward the completion of the even most complex projects. But of course, there are some limitations of Scrumban. Right? First is, as I said, there is no official guide for Scrumban. It is just a way of improving your Scrum. Right? It is relatively new, so there is no much documentation on its implementation. So you will not see a specific guide. It is just about trying out different things and improving. And probably it has less control, right? Because in Scrum, the accountabilities are very clear. There has to be a product owner, there is a Scrum Master. Scrum Master ensures that the Scrum is understood and followed and work towards making the team self-managed, making the team effective. Product owner who focuses on prioritization, ensuring that we are building the right things for our customers. So probably in Scrumban, because we don't have these defined roles, there might be less control. And some people might get confused, because we already have a preconceived notion about a particular way of working. We know that this is what Scrum tells us. Now you are asking me to have ad hoc events. So there could be one layer of complexity, but people might not understand, because we are talking about taking best of two things. So if the team is not so mature, probably there will be a limitation because of the complexity. Teams get confused. But the conclusion, again, these are my opinions. It's okay to mix and match whatever parts of Scrum and Kanban you like, as long as it is helping your team achieve their goals. See, frameworks, practices are there, but ultimately, do they serve our goal? Are we able to build value or provide value to our customers? So as long as it does, feel free to mix and match. And Scrumban suits any team that needs more flexibility than Scrum offers. And we have seen the constraint with Scrum. And anybody who wants to focus on improving the flow of work, Scrumban is for them. And as I keep saying, begin with whatever you know and improve. Of course, frameworks are frameworks, practices are practices, but ultimately we have to achieve our goal. So that's about Scrumban. I think I just finished on time. So any questions?
As we know that Kanban doesn't have any specific roles, right? So even after so many years applying this wonderful tool, I would say, or framework, I would say, why we don't have any structured roles in Kanban? And second, why we don't have any structured guidebook for a Scrumban, even though there are so many leaders, so many thought processors, thinkers. So what is stopping us to do this? Defining a role or making a structured booklet for that or guide for that.
See, to answer the second one, why there is no official guide for Scrumban. Probably, not many people are recognizing it as a particular framework. So let's write one guide, you and me. Why not?
Few minutes back, I was just thinking about the same, and yeah, we can definitely work on that.
Yeah,
And
why not?
I have done some work on that. Let us join hands together and try to publish not only 200 pages book, or even at 10 pages, 20 pages book can be circulated in the market for the learner, for the enthusiast. That's wonderful. Definitely, I'll come back to you.
Corey Lads, he wrote that book, right? So he
Mhm.
wrote that book, and but after that, say like the co-creators of Scrum, Jeff Sutherland, Cam Stopper, they established their own organizations like Scrum.org, right, Scrum INC, and they started promoting. So it's similar to that. And Kanban, again, there's one Kanban University, they started promoting, they provide training. So we can also do that. We can also say, okay, hey, now from now, this is the official guide for Scrumban, and we will provide you training and
And
mentoring. Why not?
and we'll request others to comment on that. Let us put your words, your comments, your inputs on this to make this guide complete, something like that. Right.
Yeah, somebody else was asking something. Sorry.
Yes, if no one, then I want to ask. So just now you did mention about the explicit policy. Is it something like a definition of done, or is another versions?
No, it's similar to definition of done, but as you know, right, definition of done, we are talking about the product. But here we are specifying, you can say, kind of definition of done for each of our work type. Testing is done. What do you mean by testing is done? I say, no, I ran all the test scripts, all the acceptance criteria is passing, there are no P1, P2 defects. And when I say development is done, because within the team, there could be some disagreement. When the developer says, yeah, I'm done with the development. So when I say done with the development, that means I have written the code, I have written the unit tests are passing, and we did a code review. We have this checklist. So when we pass all this, that means the development is done. So it eliminates those ambiguities and those disagreements.
Okay, understand. I got my answer now. Thanks, Satya.
Thank you.
I'm telling that any specific region, or maybe a country, or maybe continent, or any organization who is using at its most optimized way and getting a better result or outcome. Do we have any research or any survey or any data available on internet or in the market?
Well, there's no specific reason per se. Yes, in the US market, the Scrum framework is more popular. And maybe, some European markets, the Kanban is a little bit more popular, but there is hardly any evidence of that. So it is really based on the industries rather than regions. So the support team, it's not that, Kanban is not suitable for a new product development. Yes, it is also suitable, but the support teams, they tend to use Kanban, and it is more likely that they prefer Kanban because it's a natural, right? There's a flow of work and they have to maintain the work and manage the flow. There is no fixed time bound. So the support teams, they tend to use Kanban, but there's no evidence that which region really likes Kanban or Scrum. Okay, any other questions?
Hi, Satyajit. I just have a question. Like in my current organization, we do Scrum, but at the same time, we do pull in some support in the middle of the sprint, and then we exchange with whatever is not high priority, and then we do have some sort of planning if needed somewhere in between. So generally we call it Scrum, but is that actually Scrumban?
I think you are doing some flavor of it already. If you're doing a middle planning, you are changing your scope of the sprint because of some other priorities. You are also doing some ad hoc planning. Probably then, knowingly, unknowingly, you are already doing Scrumban.
Scrumban, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, good. I think we can end the session. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, so good to have all of you. So,
Thank
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you everyone for joining our webinar today.
Session. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. See you all again.
Bye.